The intent of this video is not to diminish in any way police brutality, violence, the murdering, the unjust murdering of unarmed black people. That is not the intent. The intent isn't to take away the horrible thing that happened to George Floyd. The intent is to bring perspective. I'm going to start with the most brutal murder of a unarmed white man. And I've seen this video. This killing was as brutal as the murder of George Floyd, maybe even more brutal. This is a horrible video to watch. And basically, you have this young white man here, down, face on the ground, hands above his head, connected, legs crossed behind his back. He's unarmed. He's helpless. Right here, you can go and cuff that guy. This police officer right here, who is a fucking scumbag, a total piece of shit, starts barking a bunch of orders at this guy. This guy is trying to do everything he can, but some of the stuff is hard to understand. He tells him to get on his knees. He gets on his knees, and then his legs uncrossed, and then this guy's yelling at him, getting further agitated to cross his legs, but you told him to get on his knees. Tells him to put his hands out, tells him to put his hands up, tells him to crawl towards him, but if you crawl towards him, then your hands aren't up. You're going to put your hands down to crawl. And then this guy gets up to here and he is begging. This guy's yelling and threatening to kill him if he doesn't do everything he says. This guy is trying his best to do everything he says. And then he puts his hand down to catch his balance, and this piece of shit murders him, guns him down, and was acquitted and got away with it. Absolutely disgusting. And nobody gave a shit. Nobody cared because this guy was white. We're going to go through some other cases, but this by far is the most brutal one. Zachary Hammond. So this young man, 19 years old, he's in a car with somebody that the police were after over some kind of marijuana sting. And so the police drove up behind his car, came out, police officers armed. Now, this guy should have just put his arms on the steering wheel, stayed still, followed the directions. He backs up his car and tries to take off. The police are telling him to stop, and they shoot him dead. They shoot him over marijuana. Now, obviously, they had his car, they had his license plate, they knew who he was, and so they could have followed him. They could have tracked him down later. They didn't have to kill him, but obviously he should have just put his hands on the steering wheel, did what the officer said. They murdered him. Now, if he was black, I guarantee you would be hearing people say, well, if he was white, he'd still be alive. You can't say that. You don't know. So he was murdered. Man killed by officer who was asleep. He's sleeping in his home. The officers from outside his home shot in and killed him, and then lied, saying this man had confronted him, but then other witnesses exposed the truth. So guy was just sleeping in his home, murdered. This was a horrible one. There's a video of this. Kelly Thomas. So this is Kelly Thomas right here. He has some mental issues. He was homeless, and police beat him to death. They beat him to death. They tried tasing him, and it was still hard to get the handcuffs on him. There was no threat. There was a whole bunch of officers on this guy. He was unarmed. There was no threat. When the tasing didn't work, then they used it as a weapon and bashed his face in. There's a video, and this is the back and forth of the video. If you see the stars, then it was something that they couldn't. But you look at the way this guy died. You look at the way what his last words were. He's calling out for his dad, help me, saying he can't breathe. and beaten to death by these police officers that were then acquitted. They got away with it. So absolutely horrible murder caught on tape. This man was deaf, so basically the police ordered him to do something, and he didn't do it because he couldn't hear them. He's deaf, and so he was murdered. This man, Alzheimer's, he was walking towards them. They told him to stay back. He kept walking towards them because doesn't know what's going on, doesn't think he's in danger. So they murder him. They didn't release his name. Now he may be Hispanic, but not black. And wanted to go through some overall statistics. These are statistics from 2013 to 2019. So 6 years, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, oh, maybe 7 years. And total number of deaths, and then it also breaks it down to armed and unarmed. So whites, 2,927, blacks, 1,609. Now, population-wise, whites are about 60%, blacks are about 13%. So what we're seeing is a disproportionate number of black people, the vast majority of men, who were killed compared to percentage of population. Obviously, we see the same thing in the prison system. At the same time, we see a disproportionate amount more black people also be involved with crimes. If you live in a city or around a major city, and on Monday you turn on the 9 o'clock local news, they always start with the murders over the weekend, and predominantly the person that was murdered was black. The person doing the shooting was black. There's also something else that's disproportionate for blacks. When you look at the number of unarmed deaths, 452 to compare to a total of 2927, the black percentage is higher for unarmed people that were murdered than armed people. So those are the numbers, but you can see here there are unarmed white people that are murdered by police officers, and obviously extreme cases that are unjust. So this is just to bring perspective. There should be something done about this police brutality. I'd say the biggest change is for police not to get away with it, not to be acquitted. That's really the big change we need to see, because we've seen over and over again somehow they've been able to get away with it. And you think of George Zimmerman, who wasn't a police officer. The police told him to stay in a car. He wasn't a police officer. He got away with killing Trayvon Martin. Should have never got away with it. I mean, the DNA, he said Martin had his hand on his face. There was no DNA to collaborate that. Just lied. There's no way he should have gotten away with it. So one of the biggest changes as far as removing things like illegal chokeholds and more accountability is not to have these police officers acquitted. So, the peaceful protests are great. Demanding change is great, but this is not a major epidemic. This has nothing to do with Donald Trump. This has been going on long before he was president, and there's no spike in the statistics since his full year in 2017, and obviously he's been in office for a little over 3 years now. So have some perspective and do something positive with your outrage. Do not contribute money and allegiance with your outrage to organizations that will take it and invest in further race division. That is their business model. So be outraged, demand change, but don't be conned, don't be a sucker. So that's the video. Thanks for watching. Until next time.